State running away from Michigan here in Ann Arbor.
This is not going down very well.
You think?
No. I know.
Yeah, we really want to win the game.
We got to go 30-0, and we don't play nobody.
Can you believe it?
Sports Center top 10.
Just unbelievable.
Celebratory push-ups.
That's so good.
They have the Big Ten West, and they have their crack at the Buckeyes in Indy.
The Iron Bowl is as big as it gets.
It's intercepted. He may go the distance. Touchdown, Auburn! How about this Iron Bowl? He missed it. Hit the upright. This was over. This was over. Wow. What a football game. My goodness gracious.
Yeah, rivalry week is behind us. We are 1 week away from the big reveal of the final college football playoff rankings with Heather Dinich, Emmanuel Acho, and Jim Mora. I'm Kevin Connors. So many options to choose from, guys. Heather, get us started. What's your big takeaway?
Well, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee can just put their feet up and have a fancy latte at their hotel for the final ranking because Alabama's loss made it extremely easy for them. Here's what it boils down to. Their choice is going to be Utah if it wins the Pac-12 championship, Baylor or Oklahoma, whoever wins the Big 12. And then there's still the possibility of 2 SEC teams. But look, at the end of the day, it's not Alabama and it's not controversial.
I like that, Heather. Well, look, spoiler alert. Because I don't really care what Utah does. The Big 12 team that wins the Big 12 championship is going to the playoffs. And it's no knock on Utah, but it's very simple. If Baylor wins, they're one of 4 teams to have beat every opponent on their schedule. The other 3 teams, Clemson, Ohio State, LSU. If Oklahoma beats Baylor again, now all of a sudden Oklahoma has beat 3 ranked teams in the last 4 weeks, something Utah doesn't have the possibility to do.
Well, Ach, you make a good point. 1 through 3, like Heather said, it's set. Put them in a bag, shake them up, pull them out in whatever order you want, and I'll agree with it. Number 4, that's up for grab. 3 conference championship games will decide the number 4 spot. Ach, I'm thinking it's Utah. I know you love the Big Ten, but it's Utah.
Very well done. It took all of 1 year for an average Joe to become a superstar. Joe Burrow is having one of the great seasons in the history of college football, and that's not hyperbole. He's rewriting the SEC single-season record books. He's a lock to win the Heisman Trophy. He's guided LSU to a 12-0 record and the SEC championship game, and regardless of the outcome, in my opinion, a spot in the college football playoff. The Cajun spelling of his name made him a hero on the Bayou. Joe Sixpack will always remember the name, Joe Burrow. All that plus who's on the outside looking in when we get started right now.
Welcome to Championship Drive. Who's in? Presented by PlayStation.
Snap is down, the kick is on the way, and the kick, he missed it! It hit the upright! It hit the upright! And with 2 minutes to go, Auburn will get the ball back, leading by 3! Wow! Can you believe it? Oh, Alabama's got too many men on the field! That will give Auburn a first down, I think. Yes! There is your first down. Nix takes the knee. This was over. This was over. Let the celebration begin. Get ready, Toomer's corner. Auburn's coming to roll you. Final score, Auburn 48, Alabama 45.
Biggest game of the day, as Heather said. I think the committee breathes a sigh of relief. Alabama is out of the discussion. That ensures a shakeup in the top 6. Let's dive right in. And Heather, through the eyes of the committee, what do you think the top 6 is going to look like?
I think the committee keeps Ohio State at number 1 this week because their win against a ranked Michigan team was more impressive than LSU's win against the pedestrian Texas A&M team. Number 3, Clemson. You're still there, Dabo. It's all okay. Number 4, Georgia. I think Utah gets bumped up to number 5, followed by OU at number 6. But watch that 5th spot this week. That will be the biggest debate for them.
I like that list right there, Heather. For myself, I have LSU at number 1. Ohio State sitting there at 2. Clemson's at 3. Georgia's at 4. Obviously, they have a huge test coming up this week. Oklahoma played themselves up to 5 for me. Wins over ranked opponents the last several weeks. And for me, rounding it off is Utah at 6.
Well, I'm with you on the top 4. I got LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Georgia. With the top 3, I think, like I said in the opening, you shake them up, pull them out of a bag, and I'd be happy with however they sit. They wouldn't be because of seeding. So I got Georgia at 4, Utah at 5, and then, unconventionally, I've got Baylor at 6. It should be Oklahoma. It will be Oklahoma, but I think Baylor's a better football team. I think Baylor's going to win this week, so I'm projecting Baylor there.
I like that.
You like that?
Good stuff. Hey, so there's unanimity among the top 4 teams, although there's a difference of opinion about 1 and 2 where they should be ranked. In our All-State Rankings mayhem, I want to play the what-if game, right? We're going to run through a scenario here, and I want you guys to tell me what it's going to look like. Let's assume the top 3 win their conference championship games. Ach, if Utah wins the Pac-12, who then has the stronger case, Utah or a one-loss Big 12 champion?
I've deliberated over this so long, and here's how I see it. You can't unequivocally say that Baylor or Oklahoma are better than Utah. You can't do that. But on the flip side, you also can't say that Utah is better than Baylor or better than Oklahoma, beyond the shadow of a doubt. So what you can do is look at resumes, and you can look at logic. And Baylor would have beat every team on its schedule if it goes back and it avenges that loss against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, on the other hand, would have beat 3 ranked opponents in the last 4 weeks, something that Utah, unfortunate for them, doesn't even have the possibility of doing. So for that reason, I think it's the Big 12 champ that would have to advance over Utah, because the eye test, to me, Coach, it just does not say enough.
Well, you make great points, and you're right. But for me, I do have an eye test, and I do know this Utah team and this program very, very well based upon, my past with them. And I have watched them, and I can't unequivocally say that Utah would beat Baylor and Utah would beat Oklahoma. And I say it because this is a tougher football team. They tackle. They play better defense. All right, they're more disciplined. They play better special teams. Now, Oklahoma and Baylor, they've got speed, they've got athletes, they wow you. But when you're talking about good old-fashioned physical football with guys that play with real toughness and they get after it, that is what Utah is, and that's why I have them in that spot.
The answer is you cannot answer this question until you see how they win their respective conference championship games. Because if Utah beats Oregon by 3 touchdowns or whatever it might be, and Baylor or Oklahoma squeaks by the other by a field goal, you're talking about this resonates on this day at that moment with the committee, and that alone could be the difference. People forget they're watching these games together for the only time all season, and that's a lasting impact. So how you win matters, but you are right in that when it's that close, who did you beat? And Oklahoma certainly will have a better opportunity.
Well, Oregon, listen, they're not going to beat Oregon by 3 touchdowns. Oregon is a good football team. Oregon is a team that plays really good defense. Oregon has a tremendous quarterback, so they're not going to beat them by 3 touchdowns. And so I'll be disappointed if Utah doesn't get in, but I won't be surprised. Now, this is all based on the thought that LSU is going to beat Georgia, so we'll see if that even happens.
And I think that, to Heather's point and the coach's point, I don't know that Utah can win by 3 touchdowns, but I think Utah has to win by 3 touchdowns. I think that's the position that Utah is in because, Coach, you have an affinity, but also you have a deeper knowledge of the Pac-12 than most other people do. Those that are sitting on the outside end that don't know the Pac-12 as intimately as you do, I don't know that you can just look at Utah and say they're a lot tougher than Baylor. I think Oklahoma has shown some signs of defensive weakness and some lapses. Started off super hot, weakness and lapses in the middle of the season, and they've closed during the end of the season. But I just think Utah's going to have to do the unimaginable and just completely smash Oregon.
May come down to style points. All right, that's scenario number 1. Let's delve into another scenario right here. Let's assume Ohio State and Clemson both take care of business in their conference championship games. What if Georgia beats LSU and Utah wins the Pac-12 and you have a 12-1 Oklahoma or Baylor? Heather, what then under that scenario happens?
I think this is the easiest possible scenario for the selection committee because to me, it would be very easy to justify 2 SEC teams and eliminate the debate between Baylor and Oklahoma. Then you would have Ohio State Clemson, LSU, and Georgia in whatever order they deem appropriate. Most likely Ohio State and Clemson in those 1-2 spots.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is when I think you have to think of the whole deeper philosophical question, which is the SEC bias. You know, you look at it on paper, and yes, Georgia lost to South Carolina, and that's a bad loss. I don't think the world views it as that bad a loss because is South Carolina that bad a team? They're an SEC team. You look on it at the flip side. If Oklahoma were to win the Big 12, and you look at Georgia lost to South Carolina, and yes, Georgia beat Notre Dame and beat Auburn and beat Florida. But on the flip side, Oklahoma beat a ranked Iowa State, and they also beat a ranked Oklahoma State, and they would have beat a top 11 ranked Baylor twice. So how can you just discount OU? And that's when I think the nation will cry out that there's an SEC bias at play.
Well, there's an SEC bias because the best football in the country is played in the SEC. The best football players are in the SEC. The best coaches, a lot of the best coaches are in the SEC.
I don't know.
Too far. I do.
But
I watch the games. I sit and I watch the games, and you know, I may not be the world's greatest expert on football. I probably wouldn't be, necessarily not coaching anymore. but I think I know a little bit. And the SEC, they have the biggest guys, the fastest guys, the most skilled guys.
But can you say that, Coach? This year with the way the Big Ten played collectively, I don't know that you can sit here and say that the SEC has the best football because Ohio State plays some pretty darn good football.
No, I'm saying collectively. I think Ohio State is a great football team. I love the way Ohio State plays football. I think that, they are the most complete team in the country. But collectively as a conference, in my opinion, based on watching hundreds and hundreds of games a week, it's the SEC.
But the way the selection committee would look at it is not only that LSU's only loss would be to their number 4 team, but all of those wins that you pointed out are still better than Oklahoma's wins.
Which wins are those? The Auburn win, the Notre Dame
Alabama.
win?
No, she's referring to LSU, right?
LSU.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, LSU, I'm assuming is in.
Yeah.
LSU, I just assumed LSU was in. For me, the debate is Georgia in after winning? I'm assuming LSU's in. To me, that's a no-brainer.
SEC championship.
Because if we're going eye test alone off watching the hundreds of games, LSU is if somehow Georgia wins, LSU, they've proven to be a better team over a course of a body of work.
Okay, I thought that's what you were debating.
No. I think LSU is in regardless. Now the question is, if Georgia wins off something fluky, which I think that's what it would take for Georgia to win. Maybe Joe Burrow got hurt. Maybe, 3 recovered onside kicks. There's something fluky. To me, it's a question of Georgia. LSU, they've proven it. What else do we have to see?
Well, if Georgia beats the committee's number 2 team in the country and has the SEC title, I'll do the up-downs here on set. The push-ups, whatever you're talking about if they get left out. All right, burpees, bring it on.
We were all expecting a local, and Acho gave us the express right there with the scenario about Georgia. Very interesting. All right, it's time now for a look at the AT&T Best Performer of the Week. How about this, guys? SEC bias here. We're going with Kentucky's Lynn Bowden. Set the conference record for most rushing yards by a quarterback. Coach, 284.
That's special. And that's an offense that's set up to take advantage of its best playmaker, their quarterback.
Filled in a quarterback for Kentucky against Louisville. Ran wild. Lynn Bowden, your AT&T Best Performer from Week 14. When we come back, how did this moment potentially impact the Georgia Bulldogs? And what about the argument for number 1 versus number 2? We're coming right back.
Rankings Mayhem is brought to you by Allstate, reminding you that football season is mayhem. Championship Drive, Who's In, is presented by PlayStation 4, the best place to play. And in part by Ram Trucks, built to serve.
All the conjecture, all the debate, it all comes to an end beginning next Sunday, December 8th, noon Eastern on ESPN, the College Football Playoff Selection Show. We find out who's in who's going where and where they'll be ranked next Sunday, December 8th. All right, you're looking at Bill Gates and Warren Buffett's resumes here. I mean, this is Ohio State, the #1 team according to FPI and points per game differential in college football. LSU has the best strength of record and 4 wins against the FPI top 25. So, Heather, through the eyes of the committee, who deserves to be #1? And this is particularly important given the fact that 2 will likely play Clemson.
It is. This week, I do believe that they keep Ohio State at #1 because of a convincing win. They embarrassed Michigan, a ranked team. And as good as LSU was, it was against a pedestrian Texas A&M team that's average at best this year, really struggling, right? But they made a statement defensively, which the committee called into question last week. At the end, nobody in the country has a better opportunity than LSU to make that flip because they're playing the committee's #4 team in their championship game. It's still possible, but this week, I think they stick with the Buckeyes.
Yeah, this week I had to move LSU back in, and I understand Texas A&M, they're not all that specifically this year. But everyone has questioned LSU's defense. That's been the question. That's why we knocked them from #1 and #2 in the first place. Well, yesterday, after holding A&M to 7 points, and really they probably could have put a goose egg on them if they wanted to, LSU showed me they have defense. Ohio State crushed Michigan, so no knock on Ohio State. I mean, this is literally splitting hairs. But to me, I had to move LSU back into that 1 spot.
I thought both teams came back from maybe what people would say were subpar performances. And even though Ohio State crushed Wisconsin, they had the turnovers. And I think they answered the bell going into the big house and playing as well as they did. So you can't argue with that. But my point with LSU and why I have them at #1 is that there were questions about them, and I think that they answered them. They did sit and watch Ohio State beat Michigan. They said, okay, we got to go jump on top of that, and I think that they did. But you're talking about 2 great football teams. We're splitting hairs. We're supposed to do. I'm sure that Heather's right, that the committee will keep Ohio State #1, but I
and you can complain about
LSU at #1.
Yeah.
Well, the reason it matters, and for people at home saying, who cares, it's because it's the difference between playing undefeated, defending national champion Clemson right off
with
the
a
bat.
chip on their shoulder.
Right off the bat, or the #4 team. And guys, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think this year more than any other, there's more of a gap between that #3 and #4 spot, whoever gets it.
Coach just said Clemson has a chip on their shoulder. I think a lot of people nationally are saying, what are you talking about? Well, listen to what Dabo Swinney had to say following yesterday's win.
How important is this game? It's huge. I mean, it's huge from a national standpoint because obviously if we lose this game, I mean they're gonna kick us out. They don't want us in there anyway. I mean, we'd drop to 20. You know, I mean, Georgia loses to this very same team, and the very next day it's how do we keep Georgia in it? We win to the team that beat South Carolina, and it's how do we get Clemson out? It's the dadgummest thing. So it's big because, you know, they can't vote us out. I mean, we gotta go under. We gotta go 30-0. I mean, we ain't got no choice because we don't play nobody.
They're pretty close to 30-0. They've won 27 in a row. Let me throw a curveball at you, Watch, all right? If we all agree that Clemson is the team that no one wants to play in that semifinal game, why aren't we talking about Clemson as the #1 team? And before you tell me that they haven't played anybody, they've got the best margin of victory among any team in any conference.
You're exactly right. We should be talking about Clemson as the #1 team. And I genuinely think that if they were to play LSU right now, they'd win. If they were to play Ohio State right now, it'd be close. But last I checked, Vegas had them as a 1.5-point favorite. The reason is because I think there's a little Clemson fatigue. Let's be honest. People are human. Playoff voters are human. We're all human. It's like Clemson was #1. We've seen them as #1. Let's change things around. But if you really want to talk about watching the tape, where Clemson is strong, LSU is weak. And so if you really want to break it down just as a football analyst, which we are, where Clemson's strong, LSU's weak. I think they're a better team. They could be up there at #1.
Yeah, I think that. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and Clemson hasn't played anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
Coach, quickly.
I understand the resume and who they've played, but look how they play. I mean, look how effective, how efficient, how disciplined, how they execute, how they don't make mistakes, how they don't hurt themselves, how they overcome, in-game adversity. And that's what's so impressive to me. You watch Trevor Lawrence and the efficiency that he's playing with right now. Yeah, you know what? His receivers get behind guys and they say it's an easy throw. There's no easy throw in a college football game when you're under pressure. That just doesn't exist when you're on the field.
I think Coach said it best at the beginning. You know what? You can put all three of those teams in a bag, shake it up, pick one out. It doesn't matter who you pick. You're probably going to make a pretty good choice. Samsung QLED Film Room Special Rivalry Edition of the Top 4. We were sitting on set yesterday, guys, watching this catch by David Bell, and we all said, whoa, how good is that?
Just acrobatics at its finest. I mean, that's hard to do without a helmet on and pads and cleats, etc. Now imagine him doing that. Phenomenal play.
Indiana, though, would win the open buck at Auburn, Alabama. 3rd and 5, Sean Shivers.
This is my play right here, Coach. This got me juiced last night at 12 a.m. watching it.
That was the toughest run I think I've seen all season. I mean, that was just...
Listed at 5'7", Heather.
I love it. All heart.
Boom! Deep helmeting him.
And
I
helmet.
thought you couldn't lower your head like that and ram a guy.
Let him make it, Coach.
I like it.
Number 2, Ohio State, Michigan. J.K. Dobbins gets the ball, 4 yards. And then look at here. Do they want a souvenir, Coach? Is that what that is?
You know, they were being really gentle. And then, I don't know if you saw this, he got up, he gave him a little pat on the back. Like they had no, you know.
There's a saying, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
There you go. Number 1, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Jonathan Taylor, 11-yard touchdown run. And then after the game, Connor Allen, look at this, rowing the boat at Minnesota with Paul Bunyan's axe.
Ooh.
See, does he have enough muscles to back it up for somebody from Minnesota come out the locker room?
Well, he couldn't pick up the axe and swing it, so he had to roll it.
I respect it.
Some pipe cleaners there. All right, when we come back, we take a look at the bottom 4, some of the not-so-great moments from Rivalry Saturday.
Championship Drive. Who's In is presented by PlayStation 4, the best place to play. Championship Drive. Who's In presented by PlayStation.
What a showdown Monday Night Football. Huge implications in the NFC playoff race. Vikings, Seahawks, Russell Wilson's team. Home to Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, 8 Eastern. ESPN streaming on the ESPN app. All right, time for the bottom 4 plays of the week from Rivalry Saturday. Toledo, Central Michigan. The refs trying to measure if Toledo got enough of the first down, and they break the chain.
Stay out the weight room, ref. God, dog.
That's like remember when the turnover chain was broken?
It might need to be broken forever the way Miami is. I love you, Manny Diaz. Oh, you're my guy. I promise. No hard feelings.
Can we fix it? Anybody got any tape? All right, Egg Bowl. Elijah Moore stretching for the touchdown. But then this, Coach.
Yeah, it's inexcusable. You know, you'd never see that at Ohio State. You'd never see that at Clemson. You'd never see that at Alabama. That's a cultural thing right there.
The penalty pushes them back. They miss the extra point, and that's effectively how the Egg Bowl ends. Georgia Tech. George Pickens, Trey Swilling get into it. The big story here is Pickens was ejected. He's going to miss the first half of the SEC championship game.
You just can't do it, honestly. I mean, he's a freshman. I don't know how mature he is in realizing the moment and just walk away. You know, I don't want to get punked, but you just can't do it, Pickens. Your team needs you.
That's a huge loss for the first 30 minutes next week. And then this is the Iron Bowl. And how do you celebrate? By jumping into hedges? I mean, there's got to be a better way to get on the field.
Where, you know, the Homer Simpson meme where he's
That's a good
call
right there.
Well played, Heather. I didn't spend so much time on social media.
There you go. None of us do, right? And listen, you can let your voice heard in the college football conversation. You can log on to twitter.com/SportsCenter. Vote on Monday for who you think belongs in the conversation. Can you believe 14 weeks are in the books?
One more, though. It's the biggest. It's the biggest.
The big one. That's right. We got championship games coming up this coming week. Enjoy the football. For Heather and Acho and Coach, I'm Kev. Thanks so much for watching.